Welcome to another seat at the table. I am your host for the evening, Tigner Rand, sitting in for Mr. Munson Steed. Today, we're talking about politics. We're talking about voting. We're talking about the importance of why the Black vote is so important and crucial in this election, not only for the national and federal, but also for state and local. I have joining me today candidate running for a very historical seat, Georgia's 5th congressional district for the Democratic Party. Many of you all know who sat in that seat for some time, the late Honorable John Lewis. Today, joining me at the seat of the table is Kwanza Hall. How you doing this evening, my brother?
I'm great, my brother. Thank you for having me. Thank you for rolling out. And I'm fortunate that I missed Munson, but it's so good to be talking with you. Haven't seen you in a little while, but
yes, sir.
This pandemic
Likewise.
shutdown. Great to see you, bro.
I hope you're doing well, because kind of coping with this the pandemic. How have you been able to withstand everything?
Well, I don't know if you know, but I did have coronavirus. I caught it a week right after 4th of July. And I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, number one. It knocked me down, but there is God, to be honest, because we know people don't come out of this, and we kind of take it as a joke. But yes. I had 4 days of fever, 102, 103, and then I lost my sense of taste and smell for about 3 weeks.
Wow.
And still every now and then there's a little cough that they say you just can't get rid of, right? Excuse me. But it's one of those things that when you go to sleep at night, you can't breathe. Yeah. And just in this time we're living in, it is so amazing that we're actually dealing with a virus that can kill you, and it makes it where you can't breathe. If we were not already dealing with the police brutality and the need for justice reform in our country, we've got a virus that we need some leadership around too. And that's why I'm running for Congress to finish the rest of John Lewis's time in office. He was a neighbor and dear friend of me and my family, and his late wife, Lillian, mentored me in high school through college, even invited me down to the Congressional Black Caucus. And they always were in my ear over the 15 years that I was a school board member and a council member. So I'm really glad to be here, and just thanks for having me.
Outstanding. So why is it so important? This seat is it's a hot seat in a good way. It covers a big district. So let's talk about the election. You have one election that's getting ready to take place. You're running to fill the vacant seat. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm running to complete John Lewis's term. The election is on September 29th. Early voting has already begun. People can vote tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday, which is unbelievable, and the following week through Friday the 25th, with the final election day being on the 29th. The best thing about early voting is there's no line, no crowds. If you're concerned about coronavirus, which you should be, or if you just don't have the time to pull off on that Tuesday, you've got weekend days and you've got locations in quite a number of places. We're blessed with this, and we should not squander it. For me, serving out the remainder of his term in Congress is not an opportunity for me to start building a political resume or to place a capstone on my career. It's a personal obligation to continue my justice leadership and the justice leadership that's been in the 5th Congressional District, started by Ambassador Andrew Young and continued by John Lewis. And really, I'm running to inspire the next generation of justice warriors, those young people who are in the trenches right now, who are looking for leadership. They're in the city of Atlanta, in Fulton, and Clayton, and DeKalb County, and finally are getting their voices heard. But at the same time, it's not just about civil rights, it's about silver rights as we look forward. And we know rolling out has always been a loud voice for entrepreneurship, Black business participation, women business participation, LGBT business participation. That is something that you've always been strong on, and that's why it's important. We can't go one more day without leadership around coronavirus, someone who will ensure that the George Floyd Justice Act passes and that we remove qualified immunity, and we ensure that we have some type of insurance policies on these officers and on their departments that creates some kind of reach back in their pockets when they make mistakes like kill Black men and boys and girls and women in their homes like Breonna Taylor, as we continue to see every freaking day.
Yes.
And I've been a victim of the police stopping me when I was 12 years old and pulling guns out on us. We need leaders right now who speak truth to power, leaders who will stand up to Donald Trump, leaders who are not afraid to pay the dozens with him. He's just joning us, and we still playing around thinking that this man, he's serious. If you let him be, we need to be serious on our side. And it's a different kind of leader that is needed at this point in the game. It's just like a sports team. You know, you trade out your quarterbacks. It's time for a Kwanza Hall quarterback to step in here and change the game, show up and show out. And I'm saying the same thing to all the young people. They need to turn up and turn out on this election and vote early before the 25th. And for sure on election day, if you miss that, on the 29th.
Outstanding. Just a little political history here. Explain to the people exactly the process here. Since John Lewis passed, his seat is now vacant. So now his term would have officially been up between at what time, and why is it so important that someone sits in that seat now until the next election cycle?
He served since 1986, 87 when I was in high school. He lived just one house from me, so I remember that race because he and Julian Bond were good friends of my father. They all served in civil rights together, worked very closely, and of course, if they lived next to each other, we were friends. They were friends of our family. When he was elected, it was kind of a monumental shift in the political structure in Atlanta because he was the underdog. He wasn't expected to win, and he won it outright, and it was an amazing thing. And since that time, he was just able to be the justice warrior. But he was on the ballot in June, and he ran against one of my opponents who stepped into the race and might not have been as nice to Congressman Lewis as he should have been, but we understand how politics can be and campaigns can be. And when Congressman Lewis won, a month later, he passed away. So when you lose a senator in office, the governor gets to appoint directly, which would have been an interesting situation for us here, because they can appoint whoever they want. So thank God that didn't happen, right?
Yes.
For the House of Representatives, they are allowed either to choose a special election or wait until the next term. Well, we're in the middle of the budget. We've got coronavirus. We've got civil unrest with justice reform that is not being addressed in a justice system that's unjust. And so I think the governor was trying to offer some type of leadership in that, and didn't want to create. Some people say it was for confusion, but if it were you, what would you do? Leave it vacant? And then people would say, knock you politically for leaving it vacant. So I think it was probably the best thing to have this race. But at the same time, by state law, state of Georgia law, when a candidate passes away who it has gone beyond the election day for the primary, they have to ask the party who they would like on the ballot. And the Democratic Party's process called for an internal review of candidates who were allowed a couple of days to submit their names. And after they reviewed, they were narrowed down based on a qualifications list and evaluation by a select panel of leaders who've been around the party, probably in more recent times than older ones, but there's some for sure who've been around for a long time. And they chose that to be the way they would do it. They narrowed it down from 5, and Nikema Williams, the current head of the Democratic Party, was selected to be on the ballot in November to run against the Republican nominee to complete, not this term, but to complete the election cycle and to be sworn in January for the 116th Congress. I'm running to complete the 114th Congress position for Congressman. I'm sorry, I'm in an empty room for my thing. Sorry about that. Someone was coming in. So I'm running only to complete his term. As you might see, an interim person in a CEO, an interim college president, or an interim in any business, even in a company, you're stepping in right now to bridge the gap for Munson because he was unavailable. Exactly. In this case, our great leader is unavailable, but you're standing in the stead, doing a phenomenal job, asking the right questions, and passing the baton to the team that will present this to the rest of the world. The same thing is what I'm committed to doing, because I was I had stepped out of politics after being in for 15 years, but because of the personal obligation I felt that I had, and really, to whom much is given, much is required. And when you really think about what you've done in life, I turn 50 next year. This is one of those things that I'm willing to do, to come out of private life to just help keep things smooth and make them better for the generations behind me. And when you're willing to do that, and you're willing to take the arrows in the process, it says something about you, and I say that with all humility. And we've seen people like yourself do it, and many others. And so that's really where we are. We're at a place where we've got a gap, and we need someone to stand in the gap. I'm willing to be the bridge and stand in the gap for our community, for our collective interests, not to throw crazy ideas on the agenda, not to upset the positive energy and accord that we should have in this very difficult time. The family don't need to be fighting in the car. We're on a road trip. Y'all deal with that when we get on the other side of these 5 exits in the Klan territory, you know what I'm saying? Or where the speed traps are, where the sheriffs aren't too nice. We're not gonna be fighting in our car when we're riding down the road. And that's what we need to do right now. Deal with all the fighting and get ourselves on the same page, because we've got a big election in front of us. If you're a Democrat and you choose to support the nominee, you should be, because we need to put all our energy towards winning in November. And we know it's still an uphill battle in Georgia and in our country.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So in this span between the 29th up until November, do you foresee anything being able to happen? Do you think that that between the Senate and Congress, can they come together and get along and get something done before the election, or are we just going to sit idle until after, in your opinion?
Well, I think, pressure bursts pipes, and sometimes you have one piece on the chessboard that clogs everything up, and then other times you get a piece on the chessboard that opens things up. I plan to be someone who opens it up, one who weaves things together to figure out some positive movement can happen around coronavirus leadership. Number one, first and foremost. Yes. Justice reform keeps everybody calm and happy. Not perfect, but happier than if something else jumps off, as we keep seeing things jump off just like down in Clayton. And it doesn't matter who's the leader of the organization. It happens under Black mayors, and it happens under Black female mayors, and Black male mayors, and Black sheriffs and police chiefs. So it's a deep-rooted institutional shift that we've got to apply to the justice system and to the very core of American society and American foundational living. There's a problem deep inside the core of the DNA, and we've got to root that out, do some genetic engineering on America's DNA to turn things in a different direction. And similarly, we've got to have leadership around the economic woes that have been persistent for generations in communities of color, in Black communities, in urban America and rural America, because we keep getting the short end of the stick. And this is a time for us to do something different. And I'm willing to step in there and navigate, because I have the experience from 15 years being elected, dealing with all kinds of interests, council members who wouldn't agree, special interest groups who wanted things that we didn't agree with, or wanted things we agreed with, but the votes weren't there, working with mayors who I agreed with or disagreed with, but being able to do that without being disagreeable and actually moving the agenda forward is what I have a track record for doing. And that's the type of leadership that we need right now at this particular time. Leadership that's courageous, that'll speak truth to power, regardless of what color the power is, regardless of the sexual orientation, regardless of if it's a Crip or a Blood, or if it's a Dem or a Republican. We need to get about 3 or 4 or 5 things on the collective and shared agenda so that our country can move forward. You feel me? So that's what I'm willing to put on the table. And because I'm not seeking re-election, this is a wonderful time to just be real loud, but focus about the things that need to happen.
Say, what do I have to lose?
I have nothing to lose, but our community has so much to gain by someone being courageous at this very difficult time that we're faced with.
Well, good. That's a good point. Voting is so important. During the last presidential, 2008 was a big turnout. President Obama had a big turnout both terms. voting for in 2016 was kind of low. What is it going to take to get Black people to the poll, especially Black men?
So you know what? I think that is probably one of the best questions I've had in a long time. I've been around a lot of brothers, man, and it's a lot of us who don't participate because we ask the question, what's in it? And it doesn't matter who the elected official is. If they look like us, if they're a brother and they talk like us, it's just not a lot of faith in the system, and definitely not as much faith even in other brothers who feel like you, who are in suits. So I'm changing my whole approach, and it wasn't really a shift. It's just a natural evolution to that. We're going to win this race because Black men are going to support what I stand for. We're carrying the mantle for unifying the brothers. We're going to get all the bros and all the hoods and all the different camps, and we're going to get on the same page. And as we get on the same page, watch how everything starts falling in place. Because our unity is the unity that the world's missing. It's the unity that America's missing. It's the unity that all the African diaspora, when we stand up and we unify, bro, it's a game changer globally.
Yes,
it don't take long either. 5 minutes, we touch and agree, and we all align. Two brothers walk anywhere, people scared. You got 5 or 10, the whole world just sits down like, oh, what do they want? And we can be smiling, and still everything changes. So this is our moment. We didn't know it was, but this is our moment right now, and we're gonna stand up in this race, and we're gonna carry it forward. But the agenda is not an agenda that's really about party. It's an agenda about our community, because we know what it's like to be on the bottom, and we've been on the bottom regardless of who the leader was.
Yeah, that's very true. That's a very true statement, that sometimes we get lost. We are blinded by the color of the lens about red or blue. But at the end of the day, we have always been at the bottom.
That's right. That's right. But not this time.
Not this time.
Keep on rising to the top.
One of the things,
top, my brother.
Yes, sir. Because one thing I've told people, you know, that as much as President Obama did, the one thing that I have to say as a whole, as a collective, as a Black community, we didn't ask for nothing. We did not ask him for anything. It was as if we expected it.
Yeah.
LGBT.
But we didn't have a shared agenda. We don't know what to add. We don't know the body politic and how to navigate it. We may know how to do it individually, but we haven't had collective empowered leadership that was designated to speak. Yes. So I'm seeking the role to be a designated spokesperson, but only with the blessings of the whole family. So I'm willing to do the sit down with everybody that I got to sit down with to carry the message and carry it clear and direct with full courage, no fear of anything. That's what we need right now. A brother who could talk to all the bros, all the different camps, and put it on one page. And when we show up, they're gonna say, what you want? You say, this is what we want.
Yeah, and we need to do that. I mean, that's a very good way of putting it. And it needs to be done on every level, from the city, state level, and federal level. When we have those conversations, that's the only way to be at the seat at the table to be heard, become with an agenda.
That's right.
And we have to start doing more of that.
That's right. That's right, man. I really appreciate you all having me.
Yes, sir.
Every interview I have with rolling out, y'all just keep pressing these buttons and getting me activated, and you make me touch new ground. And when we start touching new ground, but really it's our natural path, and you put a person back on their purpose by asking them a question that makes them reflect upon who they are and why they're doing what they do. You can only say that comes from God. And I just thank y'all for being a part of my life and giving me this opportunity.
Yes, sir. We thank you for your service. You have been tuned in to A Seat at the Table with Kwanza Hall, who is running for Georgia's 5th congressional district seat, the vacated seat from the late Honorable John Lewis. Any last words before we part?
Well, again, I'm running to bridge the gap between John Lewis's legacy and the legacy of Ambassador Young, those who came before me, with the next generation of justice warriors who also have a commitment to civil rights. and leadership around coronavirus, justice reform, being able to speak truth to power and make sure that people in power know that the Black agenda, the agenda of Black men in particular, will be on the table. And there's some serious dialogue that we have. And for President Trump, I've already sent the message that there's some unfinished business in District 5 that we need to discuss related to infrastructure. And I'm looking forward to sitting down with him, man to man, face to face, so we can figure out how we do some things right by the Black community in a way that has never been done before in the short period while he's still president, because he won't have much more time once I get in office, because we're going to change things. See, we need a whole nother kind of Black man leaders speaking up, because I don't know who's talking right now. I don't know what they're talking about, but we're going to go at it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. We thank you very much for joining us. You have a great evening.
Yes, you too.
All right.
My pleasure.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
We have just heard from Kwanza Hall as we talked about politics today here on the seat at the table. As we part, keep in mind that we are less than 50 days away from the big election. You have two elections in Georgia. For the 5th district, you have an election on September the 29th that you do need to go to the polls. If you don't do anything else, go to the polls. Your vote counts. If you don't have a ride, find a ride. Also be ready to go again on November the 3rd for the big one. We need everyone to show up and show out. If you don't have a ride again, find someone to bring you to the poll. We do not have an excuse for us not to cast a ballot in any election this day forward. There is no excuse for us not to vote. We want to thank you for joining us on the seat at the table. I'm your host, Tigner Rand. God is so in love with you. He's ready to wrap his loving arms around you. All you got to do is say yes. Until next time, we thank you, Kwanza.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.